Set.
All right. Little tradition
the Van Cave tradition.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's just how we break the mics out. So we actually classed up because we have a judge candidate on. We're wearing pants today. Normally it's just waist down and, but...
What's done in the Van Cave stays in the Van Cave.
That's right. This is, it's full of masons, so there's a lot of secrets. Welcome, Mary Baker.
Hi. Glad to be here.
So I have several friends running, and I'm very, very honored that you asked to join us, and I'm amazed at the schedule you guys keep when you're running for something. And you actually have a job and a family and all that.
Yes. Yeah, I was actually at a hearing this morning. I have two kids actually. One kid's in the Music Man at Midland Community Theater right now, so that's added an extra layer of crazy to everything in our life right now.
I bet.
I have a 10-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl, and my husband Joe is also a lawyer, and he's at the Cotton Bledsoe law firm, and I am at Lynch Chapel in Alsip, and we both do oil and gas and business law. So my day today started at 6 o'clock, getting the kids up, ready to go, and then immediately ran in. It's first of the month as well, had to do all the billing and
I did all my billing today too.
Exactly. Got some invoices, got them paid, then ran to a hearing, and then got a very lovely, like I was saying, Miss Amiga's burrito for lunch.
Oh yeah, I'm amazed you're not taking a nap on the side of the road somewhere. There
would be a nice nap in my future. I'm really excited about March 4th. I keep telling all my friends, March 4th, don't call me, don't email me, don't text me. I'm just gonna lay in bed all day long.
that reminds me of something I wanted to mention. In fact, Cliff brought it up one day. That this election is going to be decided in the primaries.
Absolutely.
So if you're supporting anyone, by and large, I know Sheriff, in yours you're running for 142nd Judge.
142nd District Court
Judge. And what was the other one? I guess Rebecca's.
Oh, yeah.
Rebecca
County Attorney, District Attorney.
County and District Attorney,
Yeah, so all those are going to be decided in the primaries. There's not a Democrat.
There's not a Democrat running in opposition. So that's very important. That's one thing we should have mentioned once political candidates, for some reason, started saying, we want to be on this podcast. And we were like, are you sure?
Yeah.
So we should have been emphasizing this from the beginning. A lot of these races will be decided on March 3rd in the primary. Right. So get out there and vote during the primary.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And today is actually the very last day you can register too, February 3rd.
I didn't know that.
Yep. You can't register to vote.
So
you have to be 30 days out.
That's right.
Leave it to the lawyers, right? All the rules,
of course.
all the random things.
I finished out my career working with 20-something lawyers at the DA's office, and I hang out with a lot of friends in law and medicine. You guys are all kind of the kind of in there.
We're the gluttons
somewhere.
for punishment. We go to school for a really long time, and so we just like to tell everybody all the cool things we think we know that nobody else cares about.
That's pretty much all we do in this room is that kind of thing. And so Tim's a varied history, and I've been in law enforcement a long time. We're all into all kinds of crazy things. And you mentioned the theater.
Yes.
And we know each other through a couple of mutual friends. One of them is Chris Carroll.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris and I were in a band together. We went back. We go all the way back to the 80s. So
wow.
I've seen Chris.
You've known him. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen Chris in his white jacket mullet days.
Nice.
And,
man, I need pictures of that.
Cricket Hobbs, he did the sailing episode with me. And he and Chris and I used to jam in their farmhouse.
Awesome.
And then I don't know if you can see it on camera. I was going to tell you. Yeah, you can. The purple guitar right there. Chris and I were in a grunge band in the 90s. We jammed in this warehouse. And I don't remember where we were playing, how it happened, but we were on stage together right after I got that thing, and it's got the really pointy headstock. Mm-hmm. And I just turned around to look at the drummer or something. Chris was behind me. I nailed him right in the chest with the pointing that thing, this big bruise. And I think of Chris every time I look at that guitar.
They took grunge to a whole new level.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When we were in loud.
Is it named the Purple Pain now?
It should be. I've never named that guitar.
Out of respect for your campaign, I won't say what I call it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Tim's not an Ibanez guy, but that one has a lot of memories, and it's signed by Joe Satriani.
Very cool.
I got to meet him. In fact, at my son's graduation is when we did that. So, what do you do in the theater?
So I'm on the board of governors for Midland Community Theater.
Oh, wow.
And I'm actually I think I'm the president-elect now, since it's February. I've been on the board for a couple of years, and I've just been. It's always good having lawyers on boards because it's these business decisions, and you always want to know people are following the rules and making things happen. But my son was in Beauty and the Beast, and he was Chip. He was like 8 or 9 at the time, and he was this little like face in a cup, and so it was really funny. But previously, I actually was really involved in theater and arts and stuff, music. Growing up, I grew up in a really, really small town south of San Antonio called Jourdanton. If you guys have ever...
Oh, I've heard of that.
See, if you've heard of it, then that's encouraging.
Well, I passed near it on tour one time.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, so, like, I grew up in this little bitty place where the same people had to do everything because you grew up in a small town.
Yeah.
So I was really involved in theater and all of that. And so when I moved here, I actually worked in the federal courts, which that was my first job out of law school. I worked in the federal courts for 4 years. But when you work in the federal government, you have a lot of restrictions on what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
So then once I got out of that and into private practice, then I started having babies, and I was just like, man, I'm like burned out and I need something creative. And so I did the Readers Theater at Midland Community Theater. They do a competition, the McLaren Comedy Festival. And they have original scripts.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
So they'll have original scripts from all over the country. People will bring in, and the best original script wins. And it's Readers Theater. So it was this really fun thing to get to do because as a lawyer, I don't have a lot of like hard drive space left to memorize lines and choreography and all these things that intimidate me now that I'm getting older. It's funny how when you're young, you can do these things and you just think nothing of it. And then you get older and you go, dang.
And entropy sucks.
Yeah. That's right.
I read this somewhere. Tim has the most amazing memory of any person that I've ever met in my life. And I'm kind of the opposite, but I read an article once that said our drives are full. And they explained in the information age how much you hang on to and how much you filter out, and just if you don't access it, it goes away. And that is 100% true, because when you think about it, I mean, I replaced an air conditioner motor myself over the weekend. I pulled it up on YouTube. So right there, I learned how to do something I hadn't done before and how to get it right. That information will be gone in a week.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I don't know how you hang, especially lawyers, because
well, that's why we have a lot of books.
Yeah,
we have to write it down.
All have books, and you guys won't let go of books either, even when it's all online. I remember watching the law library transition from books, and she had the I forget who was the legal librarian at the time for the county. Real nice lady, but she had, when they installed the monitors. One day I walked by and they had the screensaver blanked out, and it said, "Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated," because a lot of the old guys didn't want to do that. So
Well, if you talk to my wife, she'll tell you I have the worst memory ever.
Well, selective memory.
Selective memory. What Matt means to say is that I'm very good at memorizing things verbatim and word for word.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's one of my things. So, which is important in Freemasonry. And so,
and music.
And music.
And
Right.
And I have to remember virtually 4 different bars in the average song, and I still screw that up, and Tim can sing our entire 40 or 50 song library with no problem. But I think it's cool when I did Facebook stalk you a little bit, and one thing I kind of wanted to say was that people in public service who deal with everything from law enforcement to the DA's office and the judicial system, things I actually have experience in, the people who have an artistic side just seem to fare
you've got an
better
outlet for all of the stress. You've got some, that's why I started I did the McLaren, and I needed to do it again, but life got in the way. But, and then when my kid started doing theater, he really loves it now, and he's like this, "Mom, I want to be Patrick Mahomes when I grow up, but I also want to be in the play."
Yeah.
And I thought, that's okay. If that's my kid, I'm all for that. That's
what
pretty well
kids
rounded.
do. That's it.
Yeah.
I was amazed. I coached a fencing club, and we rented that room downstairs at Cole, the really nice wooden floor one. And
the Taubman dance room.
Yeah, the Taubman. And we were there for years. In fact, until I retired from a hip injury. But I was amazed at the talent there, and how many actors, local actors, and all the production people in Midland are just absolutely pro grade. They're like musicians. They're guys that can sit on the edge of their bed and blow us away on YouTube, but they're, in medicine or something like that, and they don't want to get into the weird lifestyle of art.
So like I got on the board at the theater, and if you guys are ever get a chance to go backstage or do any of the productions or just volunteer, because they're always looking for dressers, and by that I mean like not furniture, but like people to physically do quick change dressing backstage. But if you look, they've got like all of the old plays that they've done, like people in town have signed on the backstage wall for each of these plays. And it's names of people like mayors and, doctors and lawyers and oil and gas guys and people you would have absolutely no idea that they were all so involved and so creatively involved. And I kind of realized in doing that and working backstage at the theater and talking to people that a lot of what Midland has built with our arts community is like our reaction, our oasis in the desert, our way to escape and get to know one another and let that other side out and let your hair down.
Yep.
It
because
really is.
You're like stuffed in this, box all week of, oil and gas engineer or lawyer or law enforcement officer. But then there's this other part of you that really needs tending in terms of just creativity. And there's some really freaking creative people in this town. Yeah. It's amazing.
The theater itself, I grew up, we moved here in 75. I was just a little bitty kid in kindergarten with the 70s oil boom. Mm-hmm. And for as long as I can remember, well into the 80s, that theater was absolutely the hub of the community, especially the creative hub of the community. And it served. It's kind of funny now that it doesn't. It serves an analogous purpose as to what it once did, but it's not the same because people are different. Culture has changed. It's more about everything's online, and it's about Twitch streaming and your social media and kids aren't. I'm glad to hear you say that you have a kid that's interested in it because. It's one of those things that seems to me like Pickwick Players. Like you had to fight to get into the Pickwick Players when I was 7 or 8 years old, and now I would imagine I never hear anybody talking about Pickwicks, but I know they're still there.
It's still very active.
Very much. In fact,
very active.
we get a lot of got into a lot of scheduling issues around Pickwick, and it was just packed with people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We picked up a few fencers like that. The guys just hanging out in the hallway and like, what's that sound?
I know.
Yeah. What's
well,
all
it's
that
so funny you
clattering?
say that because I saw the fencing practice schedule on the wall there when I was doing stuff with my kids, and I thought we have a fencing team in Midland.
Yeah.
This is phenomenal.
Yeah, we had a few. We had some Olympic level coaches come in and help me out a couple times. We produced. Let's see. I was a vet national champion. And then we had a couple move off to Amarillo where they're better coaches. I'm a developmental coach, so I'm really good at taking somebody off the street and teaching them the sport and maybe getting them to their lowest comp rating. And then they go to somebody that's really sharp, like the guys up in Amarillo or whatever. And in fact, I saw on your bio you went to Texas Tech Law School.
Yes.
Aaron Clements of Texas Tech. He's a lawyer, and I believe he still teaches at Tech. I forgot all that. He is the coach for the Texas Tech fencing club.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
that's awesome.
I love watching his Facebook page. That guy's 100% lawyer. He's fascinating. But
we lawyers are big nerds. Like that's like they say when you go to law school, like the very first day they sit you down, they say you're going to have something you obsess about by the time you graduate law school because law only develops that part of your personality, and you will find like your stress thing. You will, maybe you'll exercise too much, or you will, some of it are vices, or some of it will be like you pick up fencing, and that's like you have to do it every single day because you become obsessive about it.
And I really like what you said. It was very well said about the release because I was extremely physical and fencing and SWAT and. In the gym every day, that kind of thing. I used to do distance running. I did bicycles. I did a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. But there was absolutely nothing like just melting the stage and just leaving it all there.
Exactly.
That last set where you just burn the place down, you put your gear down, you shut your amp off.
And you don't think.
Yeah, and you grab a towel and just go sit down.
That's the best night's sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, that even if it's 2 hours before you have to go on to the next show or whatever, it's still the best night. But,
and you make your best friends that way because you've had this shared community experience.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something in Midland, like people who move here, because we have so many people moving in and out on a constant basis. Like, I feel like when you get involved with something like the theater, then those types of shared experiences and commonalities are what keep people here and keep them happy and make them plug into what is Midland in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
No, it's not weird at all. That's very, very true, I think. We would probably, I was sitting here thinking about how many people you and I probably know in common.
And
just
until we
because of the
Facebook friend
theater.
each other, we won't know.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I bet Caroline Engelstad is.
Oh
one of
yeah,
them.
yeah, she's in the show right now with Alex. Yeah.
She and I worked together for a couple of years.
She's amazing, by the way.
Oh, she's great.
Oh, my
She's one of my
gosh.
favorites. We were born just a couple of days apart.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we always have fun around our birthday,
Oh, fun. Yeah.
It's amazing. There's around 250,000 people in the Permian Basin right now. Or, well, just Midland, Odessa, something like that. Numbers nobody really even knows.
What they're now calling
census
the
is
greater
thinking. Yeah.
metro area.
Yeah,
or whatever.
and all those people, and you still run into, and people you just had no idea.
Exactly.
And-
because during the week we're stuck in our offices doing our 8 to 5 or doing your whatever your thing is that makes your money, and then you find your crowd.
It's like that. I've been in other countries and run into people from Midland.
Yeah.
When I was in the Coast Guard, we were out patrolling one day in the summer, and it was boring. There was nothing going on. They didn't want us hanging out around the office. And we saw a bunch of Boy Scouts at a pier by it was a public pier by a shrimp boat dock and all. And we just thought, hey, let's go see what they're doing, and hand out whatever we had, stickers or something. We got out, and the scoutmaster was John Martinez. I went to high school with him.
Oh, that's funny.
You gotta be kidding me, man! I didn't know you lived here. But so you're running for 142nd. Now that's it's Judge Gillis is retiring, right?
That's right. Jody Gillis is retiring.
Jody, I remember him. I came in when I believe it was Judge Baskin.
Yep.
Was on the bench.
Pat Baskin.
And then Judge Gillis. Yeah. And I'm still. When I was at the DA's office, I worked on the trial team for the 441st. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a lot of knowledge of what goes on in 142. Now it has a civil and a criminal docket, more so than the others, right?
All of them do. Yeah. So a lot of this is just stuff that lawyers may know or care about, but the general public is just like, just keep doing what you got to do, guys, because you're keeping it running just fine. But yeah, we have 4 general jurisdiction district courts. And the 441st is one of them, 142nd, 238th, and 385th.
So that's Judge Ladd.
Leonard, Dar.
Linda Mood.
Linda Mood is the...
Oh, no. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the specialty court.
He's specialty court.
Yeah, he does divorce and family cases.
Yeah. Yeah, that family law was his thing before he went in.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, so he's the 5th district court, but he's this, like I said, he's the specialty court. Mm-hmm. And under statute, you can have, when you have certain jurisdictional requirements and different, mainly it has to do with the population and how many cases you have filed, because the number of divorce cases Judge Linda Mood handles is insane.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Like, oh my gosh, he has a volume practice. Mm-hmm. But the other 4 courts, they have their general jurisdiction, civil and criminal courts. And what that means is they'll hear criminal felony cases, but they'll also hear our contract cases, land title disputes, oil and gas. If you have car accidents and insurance cases that get filed, those will also get filed in that district court. And so the DA's office has the discretion on how to assign the cases to the courts on the criminal side, and then the district clerk's office takes in all the civil filings. And so once as the lawyers, you pay your filing fee, you get your filed case number, and then the district clerk kind of shuffles them around like cards. So they have some discretion in how it's handled within each of the courts within those 2 entities. But yeah, the 142nd would be, criminal felony cases, and then the civil filings.
And are they backlogged on civil right now?
Yeah. Jody Gillis has been doing a great job for 25 years serving our community. So it's nothing personal. I think all of the courts are backlogged. And I think that's because I started digging into the numbers. The reason I was running is because on the civil side, we started noticing that some of our cases just were sitting longer than they had in other times. And we thought, this is odd. What's going on? So you start digging into the numbers through the Office of Court Administration in Austin has to keep all of these records, right? So you start digging into the numbers, and there's been a 59%, so almost 60% increase in the number of civil cases filed in the last 8 years. But we don't realize it because it's not affecting the average citizen on a day-to-day basis. Like when you see an increase in criminal filings, because you're getting called for jury duty. Like there's a whole lot more times you're getting called for jury duty.
Yeah, they're raining out jury summons.
Yes. And so we've been paying really close attention, and it's on the evening news, right? Hit and run case or drug increases or property crimes, whatever that might be. So we've had increases on the criminal side too. Don't get me wrong. We really have. But we just haven't noticed the civil side as much because it's really easy when the civil law firms pay attention to the cases and kind of have other alternative methods of resolving those same cases.
Right.
To just say, oh, well, that's going to resolve itself. We don't need to worry about that. But
I'm actually surprised that it's only 59% because if you look at the population explosion just over the past 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, and the industry.
And the industries that, we know where a lot of the civil cases get filed. It's a lot of it has to do with, things that happen, civil property infractions, quote unquote, that might have to do with oil field equipment or oil field people. And I would imagine that's a big part of it. But also you have a lot of people just living in really close quarters with each other, fighting over stuff.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
and it's little things, but it's also our title issues. That's
title conflicts and that sort of thing.
So I wrote title opinions for 2 years.
I'm in the middle of a title conflict myself.
Oh, are you?
Right now.
Yeah. On a residential?
On a residential, yeah.
Yeah. So you get all these people moving in and out of Midland and buying and selling homes, or you have on the oil and gas side, you have these investment companies getting East Coast funds or, wherever they're getting their, private equity coming in with just cash infusion, and they're buying up everything they've got, and they may not be paying as close attention to dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And suddenly you get a lawsuit with 95 defendants because, X oil company wants to drill a well, and we're drilling in Midland now, whereas we weren't 10 years ago necessarily as much. We had vertical wells, don't get me wrong, but we weren't doing these massive horizontal projects that we have happening right now. So you get these very complicated disputes coming from the civil side when our judges are already overwhelmed because we've had an increase in population and an increase in criminal. And then you've also got all of these liens being filed, and you've got collections cases because these service companies, when oil starts going soft, the service companies have a hard time collecting and getting their needs met, and that goes downhill pretty quickly. It does. It just starts piling up.
And I don't understand the dynamic. My wife's a contract director for a big service company, and people just don't pay their bills. And they'll go outside of the net 30 or 90 and just sit on it and wait for different statutes to, time limits to expire and go, yeah, we're not going to pay you because in the contract. And she's filing liens all over the place. And there are people going broke and companies that fail and you get bought out, and I could see all that. Now, on the criminal side, and I mentioned it in I think it was when we talked to Tom Hain, we were seeing first of all, with your population, your domestic violence cases, no matter what your economy is. And as soon as there is one, and of course now we have impeding breathing and all these other things, you're just making an immediate felony in a lot of cases. So what happens is you'll have a couple or a family here, and there'll be that incident, and they, victims or suspect or someone will move back to whatever state they came from.
It just complicates everything.
I don't know what's going on with Midland, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a disproportionate number of people I looked for in Midland, Michigan. But Anyway,
Rust Belt, man. People
So,
people
yeah.
come down to work. Hey, there's another place called Midland where I can actually make a living. Let's go.
Yeah, right.
yeah. So we have to do the whole due diligence thing to try to find them, and they're in another state.
Yeah.
So we don't have any jurisdiction, so we've got to find a DA's
Yep.
office that has the equivalent type of investigator or whatever agency does. We'll go out and serve them and, be able to write up to say we tried, swing and a miss, 3 strikes,
Yeah.
it's over, and then take that to a judge. And then immediately they'll go, well, you need to try again or try harder. So and then your cases start to back up. And
Yeah.
I think when I retired, it was around 18 months to 2 years by the time one came up, and even longer. It was
Yeah.
going to be a pretty messy
And
trial.
it's just, I mean, I was on the United Way board for 6 years, and I was the United Way board president. And one of our focus areas with United Way is self-sufficiency, which includes housing. And so we were always looking at
Mercy.
stats on people moving in and out and how all of this stuff works. And it's overwhelming. I mean, and we keep talking, and our leadership in our town, rightly so, keeps talking about how, okay, we need to be famous above the ground as we are below the ground. And it's like just infrastructure. It's so difficult because, like, for instance, with the courts, we statutorily have these courts. It's not like we can just magically decide, hey, look, we're pretty overstaffed. I mean,
Yeah.
overworked and understaffed. Can't we just have another court? No. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not
it
that
doesn't work
easy. You
that
have
way.
to, like, run it all up the chain of command, and you have to, pass all this stuff. So you just end up having infrastructure issues that you can't do anything about, and it's so frustrating. But then you just got to try. You got to keep moving, plodding ahead, and doing what you can.
Well,
yeah, it's go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was
Sorry.
just going to say, if it's any consolation, my title conflict situation won't be going to court. It's a friendly.
Fair enough.
It's a we got a couple of pieces of family property that were incorrectly platted.
Oh, yeah.
And we're,
See?
we're working out that line on the plat, and you would not. Well, you.
How
would.
many surveys have
would
you
know.
done? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, it's
yeah.
something that.
And how many years has it dragged on?
It's been over a year now.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about this part of Texas, and my wife's went through it when her grandmother passed away, and they were from Miles and Eola and all the cotton country out there, and how many land deals are written on a piece of a torn out feed sack.
Oh, yeah.
And people would cross out and ink in stuff, and some, you'd have a lawyer that runs a hardware store that does both, and it's a mess, and I can't imagine how some of that comes out.
I had I had been doing, I worked in the federal courts for 4 years, and we handled high criminal cases and a lot of complex civil insurance and contract disputes there. But when I went into private practice, I really didn't know terribly much about the oil and gas industry. I grew up in what's now the Eagle Ford Shale. So, I mean, I grew up knowing booms and busts, and I kind of had an idea of what things were from just, knowledge growing up. But when I got into doing title work was when I really had a strong appreciation for what there's armies of people in Midland who are landmen. And, you walk up as an
independent landman.
Yeah. What does that even mean? Right. But it's so much work and so many hours looking at records back to sovereignty.
Oh, yeah.
Which is insane.
My grandparent, when we sold my grandparents in San Angelo in Tom Green County, after my grandparents died on my mom's side, we sold their property, and I got the full abstract of title.
Exactly.
And I read it all the way back to the beginning. It went back to the Texas land grants.
Yep.
And dude,
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you
It
guys.
does.
The first description of the property was a certain piece of property near a tree stump near the North Fork of the Concho River.
Yep.
Well,
What? And that is one of the reasons, one of many reasons why title work is so complicated in Texas.
Massively complicated.
Our recording studio in this house is there because the previous owners were independent landman service, his husband and wife and kids and all. And I'm friends with one of the kids. This is how we got the place as a fixer-upper. And to this day, I still get mail addressed to them at this address for changes in deeds and things that happened back in the 70s. I think they bought this house in like 74, 75.
Wow.
And owned it until Nicole and I bought it when we got married. And I mean, everybody's dead. Everybody on the,
Yep.
and
But that's because somewhere in a courthouse, there is a paper that says this deed was prepared by X at this address. And somebody's like, oh no, we have a problem. We better go find it. And so they're like grasping at straws, hoping that this person is still alive and can tell them, do you have this record to tell me how you got to this number?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, and that's what our land title analysis, it's incredibly like minute details. And just like that, you were talking about like when you have a land deed written on a napkin. Well, okay, that sometimes under Texas law, depending on what your wording is, that can pass muster. So you have to really be careful and see like, okay, what's the effect of this? And or especially with probates.
Oh, I just got through doing all my probate stuff and getting it set up in a trust fund for my kiddo. And oh man, that's a mess.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I would come home and find those letters that I was talking about in the mail. I'm like, man, I'm so glad I'm on the criminal side.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a much speedier process.
Yeah. It's like, when I was a patrolman and I'd drag in at 4 a.m, I'm like, you know what? Somebody barfed in my back seat the last shift, but thank God I don't have to mess with this. It's 15 pages and everybody's dead and all that. You mentioned the federal courts. Now you did I understand right? You worked under or with Judge Janelle in that system?
Yes. My first job out of law school, I was hired by Rob Janelle because I went to Texas Tech. And Judge Janelle also went to Texas Tech. And so Red Raider pride here. So shout out to Patrick Mahomes. We were watching the Super Bowl, cheering for him last night. But I worked for him for 4 years. Well, I'm rounding up. It was 3 years and 10 months and some days, but almost 4 years. And we had the Midland Odessa division of the federal courts and then the Pecos division of the federal courts. So what people don't realize is our federal court actually has one of the highest volumes of criminal trials in the nation at points. And when I was working there, it was one of the top criminal trial courts in the nation. We just had a very heavy docket. And we also, through the Pecos division, Pecos has its own federal courthouse, which is really awesome. If you've ever get a chance to go out there, it's like completely automated. The lights turn on and off automatically.
Their clerks,
it's very, very fancy.
Their clerk's office is amazing. Yeah, those people are
very
fantastic.
Kind people.
They've gone above and beyond for me dealing with stuff because, we use a lot of federal records on the state criminal side, for enhancement and stuff like that, and it was fantastic. And I remember in the 90s, early 2000s, when the federal criminal load was so high, the Marshal Service used to hire us.
Yep.
When I was the deputy sheriff, that was sweet off-duty pay. But I got to sit in Judge Janelle's courtroom quite a bit, and that guy's been to Guadalupe Peak a number of times.
Oh yeah, like hundreds.
Yeah, that's all that guy did.
I climbed it with him 5 times, I think.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So the reason he hired me, and it's really funny, you guys will get a kick out of this because you look at me now and you're like, oh, here's this little cream puff lawyer. She sits at her desk all day and does research. I was a park ranger in Alaska for a summer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I worked at Katmai National Park, and I was the person who was trying to make sure that the Japanese tourists didn't get eaten by bears. That was one of the hardest things I've ever done for a summer in my life.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So
makes sense, though.
Yeah. Well, and I got hired to do that job because my undergrad, there was some connection there, some person who worked in Katmai, which, like, if you guys ever get a chance to go, like, everybody should go see Katmai. It's pristine. It's beautiful. It's like the middle of nowhere. It's like, Ralph Waldo Emerson, times 20 with the mountains and the salmon and the bears. But like you can only get there by float plane. And so you kind of pack in and you do all this stuff for 4 months. They train you up, you lead tours and you deal with the animals. But I got hired for this because my family were farmer ranchers and I grew up working cattle. And so the person doing the interview said, well, if you can handle cows, then I guess you can handle bears.
I think just from personal experience, bears at least will just run from you. But
mostly,
yeah.
I mean, I kind of felt like, and these were the giant Kodiak grizzlies too. So like, It's the the iconic picture of the bear on top of the waterfall catching the salmon in its mouth, right?
Depends on how hungry they are as to whether or not they chase you or not.
Yeah. Well, they're all super hungry when they first come out of hibernation.
Right. Yeah.
And that was the scary time because we got up there end of April and I was there until like mid-August before I had to go back to school. And the very basic thing about bears that I just remember I remember thinking, y'all are like a cross between a cow and a really energetic dog. Yeah. Because they're so smart.
That's good.
The way that like an energetic dog will like watch you and see what you're doing. But then like cows, they'll just kind of like mosey on and do their thing when they're full. And that was exactly because there were so many salmon, like because all the sockeye salmon come to King Salmon, Alaska and go up the river to spawn. And it was literally like the laziest thing these bears could do to like put their paw in the water, pick up the fish and they're done,
I'm going to test your artsy weirdness. I had no idea you worked in Alaska as a ranger. That's awesome.
Thanks.
I've only been to one town in Alaska.
Okay.
Sicily, Alaska.
Sicily.
Are you a Northern Exposure fan?
Oh, yes. I remember. Yeah. Yes.
We went to the
awesome.
25th Moose Fest. It's actually Rosalind, Washington, where they filmed that. And that was pretty
awesome.
Cool. Yeah. They shot a little bit, and I think Juneau and Anchorage, but it was really in Washington, and all the interiors were in a warehouse. But anyway, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good to hear. I can't imagine. Well, one of my friends went from Midland in law enforcement to Alaska. At a local PD, and he loved it, and then he got out, and he's a tradesman now and adores that.
Cool.
So,
well, and there's a lot of oil and gas folks who go up through Alaska too.
Yeah.
With the different pipeline and Barrow and all of that stuff. But I mean, I just went because I was in search of adventure, I guess. I don't know.
It
was when I saw the flyer, I thought I have to try this because you don't get these opportunities very often.
If you think about it, if you're looking for true pioneer adventure, that's about the last place.
Yeah.
One of the last places on Earth to do it.
Yeah. And they also, I mean, obviously I'm a fan of the national park I worked at, but we also led trails through the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. And if you guys get a chance to check that out, it's where they sent in the 60s, they sent the astronauts there to train for the moon landing.
Oh,
because
I forgot about
it was
that.
a volcano. Like I remember because we used to have to give the informational tours, right? And you would be walking through this complete lack of vegetation, just like chalk floor, where this novoruptive volcano blew up in 1910s. I want to say like 1912, and they said one of the facts that just sticks out in my head was that if that volcano had erupted in New York City, the ash plume would have hit Chicago.
Wow,
that was how big it was. Wow. And they called it the Valley of 10,000 Smokes because the ash fell on the river, and then because there was a river valley right there, and all of the water was evaporating up through the ash plume. And so for years, it was just steaming like that. So it's a really neat place.
You talk about it being an adventure. ADAC and I can't remember the other one. It's the big Coast Guard stations. I know ADAC for sure, and another that man, if you wanted to work in the Coast Guard, that's where you go. And it was actually kind of tough to get in because all I did was police work. So I didn't have, wasn't boat qualified. I didn't, I got to touch guns and paper, and that was about it. But you had to be able to do everything. A friend of mine was a cook, and which is a huge deal in the Coast Guard. I bet our food is probably second only to the Navy submariners.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was like going to a culinary school. And they learned how to cook wild game and fish and all that, and how to store it. It was amazing stuff. But he did a lot of law enforcement work. Mm-hmm. And they said Alaska and those kind of details are why it's so hard to get in the Coast Guard. Because even if you want to be a cook, you're going to wind up being law enforcement. You're going to wind up doing smuggling work, fisheries work, all that kind of stuff. So you have to be able, even if you're going to be an electrician or something like that, a mechanic,
multitask. You
have to be able to pass a background check as law enforcement. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I became a big fan. Well, I mean, I grew up in Texas, so I mean, Second Amendment. My dad had guns and guns and guns growing up, but I really appreciated them more when I had to deal with bears because I was not allowed to carry one. I mean, I was a park ranger. I was in charge of keeping other people safe. And these Japanese tourists, bless their hearts, they don't speak English. And you're telling them, hey, stay 50 yards away. There's a mama bear with 3 kids. She's going to kill you. And they're just walking, clicking with their camera. Like they have no idea what's going on. And I remember once I had to like body check this lady because I could just, after months, you kind of get to know the bears. They're all kind of in the same places. Yeah. And I remember thinking, if I had a gun right now,
she had watched too many Coca-Cola commercials and thought the bears were sweet.
Mm-hmm.
That's
like the grizzly man.
I could go off. On that.
I actually gave the bears. I met him before he died. Tim. Gosh, why his name is escaping me right now.
No, you're close though.
No. Something way.
I'm gonna lose it.
It'll come up to us.
But yeah,
the grizzly man.
Hey, little champion. Mm-hmm. What? Okay,
yeah.
We'll think of it when
I want to name my next punk band Bear 141. That's the one that killed him because it had the tattoo.
It had
And so it was an old aging bear that before the hibernation was...
Yeah, it was the end of the season when he...
Yeah,
they had waited too late to get out of there.
Yes.
Yeah, and he had actually
that was his thing.
Videoed this cute behavior of this bear, and it was diving. And a biologist said, that is an old bear that can't catch a healthy salmon and is trying to get a dead one off the bottom.
Yep.
That's why it ate the guy, because he wouldn't run from it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
exactly right. Well, I have one story, since we're telling war stories.
Yeah.
An acquaintance of mine, his life was saved by his rifle in Alaska, and this has been over 25 years ago. Is when I was college age, maybe just had graduated from college, and he went up there to go hunting in the springtime, and he laid his pack and his rifle down. They had just gotten off the plane, and they're getting all their stuff arranged, and he lays his pack and some of his gear up against a fallen down tree and his rifle, and he went to, it's been a long plane ride. He needed to kind of relieve himself there, and so right about the time he was, thankfully, I guess, almost done, he started hearing what sounded like a freight train coming for him, and he got to the gun and got the safety off and got a round off and hit the bear and stopped the bear, but the bear still had enough momentum that I can't remember. I don't know. This stuff becomes legend and lore at a certain point, but I can't remember if the dead bear was still moving and hit him, but it was a really
close shave.
A really close shave. And so people don't understand. I'm glad that we have a culture that that's a conservationist culture. I think that's important. Yeah. But I think that along the way, people they have a tendency, and media also has a tendency to ignore reality when it comes to what nature is all about and what being in nature can be about, and the dangers and that sort of thing associated with it. So
yeah, I've heard a lot of stuff like that, especially that weird fox they have in Russia. I think it's Russia, one of the former blocks. It was a genetic study about domestication and how the whole canid flow became domesticated. They started trying to domesticate these foxes, and they got pretty close before they ran out of money. Maybe it was when the curtain fell. I don't remember. But there are all these cute YouTube videos. The whole point of the history I just screwed up is there's a whole bunch of these YouTube videos of these people with these cute pet foxes, and
everybody wants a pet fox.
So now everybody wants one, so they'll grab a kit, from dad's hunting trip, and it comes home, and it's just a disaster. But that's amazing. So that's pretty cool. I did not hear any of that out of your background. That's awesome.
Sorry. Well, that's how I ended up in Midland, because Judge Janelle was impressed, and he likes hiking and climbing mountains, and so
you literally went from one of the most picturesquely beautiful places on planet Earth to one of the most rugged places on Earth. I'll call it rugged. People don't like when I call it ugly, because it's not ugly. It's a savage beauty. It's
yes, sparse and stark.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like modernist beauty. And the funny thing is now, so I've lived here for 13 years, and the funniest thing to me now is I'll go visit, my sister lives in Pennsylvania. I'll go visit her, and I'll be driving like from the airport to her house, and I'm just like, God, there's too much vegetation in this place. There's just like weeds growing up out of the concrete. Like, what's up with this?
I was riding home at Corpus Christi when it was overgrown, or it's not overgrown like places like that. By that I mean, actual foliage, and it's kind of easier to navigate. You can see further, and I go to places like New Jersey, Cape May, and Philly, and all that, where it's a 2-lane road. These giant trees, even Louisiana, where a lot of my family lives, and it's weird. It's sort of,
it hems
what do you call it? Agoraphobic? Acrophobic?
It's claustrophobic.
Agoraphobic, yeah. And you're, it's really nice when you pitch a tent and you sleep under it, and listen to the wind and the trees. And then you got to find the way home. All you see is trees. And it's kind of weird when you're used to 3 foot tall foliage.
There are advantages to living in a place where you can watch your dog run away for 2 days.
Rover, come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been, West Texas has been good to me. But so what I'm hearing, I have never heard, honestly, I've never heard a lot of criticism, if any, nothing I could even remember, a bad story or anything coming out of that court, out of 142. So pretty much you'd have your work cut out for you and just hit the ground running doing what you're doing, right?
I mean, so my plan, and something I was talking about in a forum a few weeks ago was, because, like I said, all of our judges have been just a little overwhelmed. I really want to just get in there and help clean up the docket. And so I think that one of the things I would really like to do is take some of my federal experience, because, I mean, we can criticize the federal court for a lot of things, but the court does run fairly efficiently by and large. And they have very efficient software that helps with case management and docket control. But some of the stuff that software does can be done with a simple Excel spreadsheet if you just stop and do it and keep track of it. So that's kind of what I want to do. I want to get in there and see what's the lay of the land. Like, it's one thing to see numbers on a page, and it's another thing to see where the cases are. And, okay, so this one was argued 2 years ago, it needs a ruling, or this one was argued 6 months ago, it needs a ruling. And then just kind of dig out a little bit, but then just implement good structure. I mean, I'm a structure girl. I'm very much like,
me too.
Give me a framework, and we can move from there. But it's like, I mean, jazz after that, but there's a framework. So like, that's kind of my plan, to just get in there. And on the criminal side, like I said, I had worked in the federal court, so I have the experience of, jury charges and suppression orders and hearings and stuff like that, and pretrial hearings and motions and limine and all these things that the general public doesn't care about, but it all needs to be done.
Right.
So, I mean, my whole thing on the judicial philosophy is I think that a lot of the folks like you guys who are doing your jobs on a daily basis, I trust that you're going to do your job, and I expect the evidence to be presented. And after that, I expect the defense to try and pull it down and show me why it's wrong. And everybody move along. But I think a lot of people get very, the word that's coming to mind is verklempt. They get very worked up.
I was so
I'll give you a topic.
Yes. But they just get so worked up about, like, the trial court, because it's important, right? But the beauty of litigation and trial work, as opposed to title work that we were talking about earlier, title work, you have to be perfect, because there is a well being drilled. People are getting paid. There's banks investing money. Like, you cannot make a mistake. And if you do, then you're costing lots and lots of money. But litigation, there's always an appeals court. There's always an option to rehear it. There's always, if there's really a problem, you can have people come and sort it out.
Never thought about that.
That's to me, that is the beauty of litigation. Because
there's an entire avenue for efficiency there that maybe doesn't get utilized the way it could be.
Bingo. Yeah. And so for me, like, especially having worked in a trial court, like, it's call a ball or a strike, move along. I mean, do the best you can, obviously, and pay attention, because there's, like you guys know, there are victims involved. There's a plaintiff. There's someone making a complaint every single time you're in that court. And it's their property, their life, sometimes their liberty. They're going to go to jail. And so we've got to do it right, because you wouldn't want somebody to flip that on you and not pay attention.
So that kind of, I hope I don't put you on the spot by asking you this, but that sort of leads me to a natural question, the next natural question, I think. What's your personal drive, your personal passion that makes you want to run for office and be here? Why do you think it needs to be you?
That's why you're here. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I think it needs to be me specifically, because I have just a broader, different experience like that. I'm a really weird person. I've always wanted to work in that type of field. I did the federal clerkship because I was a philosophy major and an English double major in undergrad. Finding answers to questions, helping people has always been my thing in life. Like big questions, big issues, get it sorted, move along. And like I said, I come from a farmer rancher cattle family. And so practicality, like efficiency, like Texas, like this is how we do it. So I just feel like I'm very well suited to the job. That's my temperament. And so I want to kind of get in there and, like I said, clean it up, make it happen, but also care. I mean, it's important, not just care about, the court staff, but care about the guys who are presenting the evidence. I mean, every single person who's sitting in that courtroom, we're using taxpayer dollars. Like at the end of the day, we are all using our friends' dimes to make that happen. And it should be an important process to us. And then secondly, whatever is happening in there is important enough that we've all had to stop what we're doing and go and take care of this. Right. So it needs to be done right. And I'm enough of I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm enough of a stickler for detail and reasoned conclusions that matters to me. It matters deeply to me to know that there's somebody in there who's going to pay attention, who's going to read all of the briefing, who's going to look at the cases, and who's going to say, okay, I have this. Let's go. That's what I want to do.
Sounds like a calling to me.
Well, thanks. I was block walking the other day, and this really sweet gentleman was saying, in Midland, you have to tell everyone that this is your calling. And I said, I don't have to tell them that. It's kind of true. I mean, like, it's weird. I just feel like, you take these personality tests, even when you're a kid, and it says, you should be a barber or you should be a poet or whatever. And I was that personality every single time. I forget ENTJ. I'm an extrovert, which was why title work was hard for me because I talk too much. Yeah, ENTJ. Yeah. And it's the logical, rational, but extroverted and intuitive. And so that's just kind of the personality I have. And I've also been going to this class. Have y'all heard about the Enneagram? Are y'all familiar with that at all?
Maybe.
ENNEAGRAM, Enneagram. It's this old, weird thing. And a friend of mine posted on Facebook, his wife was doing this class, and I thought, okay, my book club had kind of read
Should
about
I
this.
leave the room? Because this might be the next thing I obsess over.
Oh, no.
I'll let you guys talk. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I think it's like a Victorian era. Well, go ahead.
No, it's actually way older than that, I found out. Yeah, okay. It's like, it ties to the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah.
And it was like this ancient personality. Like there's 9 personality types. And then each of those has like 2 options. So maybe it turns out to 18 or 27 total. But it's supposed to help you understand. You have to type yourself and you figure out how you interact with the world because of how, God and the devil have set up your personality and how you're supposed to overcome sin in the world. And the kinds of sin that are specific to your personality. So, like with the it's this weird thing because you first look at it and it looks like it's hocus pocus. It's this 9-pointed star diagram and it shows you all this stuff. That.
Yeah,
and it looks really weird. But I started looking into it a little bit more with this church group, and we're all kind of like creepily interested.
You have officially sent me down a wormhole.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Tim and I are both going to be up 4 in the morning.
You got to read this.
Check out this link. This is awesome.
And the worst part is like you read it and you start like learning about yourself because it'll tell you like this is your 7. This is one of the sins that you're the worst at. And the first time I read mine, I was like, no, I'm not. And then I started thinking about it. I thought, oh, yeah, I am.
Yeah. Kind of forces you to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And so I guess this was like an early Christian like teaching tool for that kind of has, new age mumbo jumbo. It's kind of in the Renaissance.
I don't run from that stuff because it's interesting. It doesn't,
Yeah,
I don't think demons are going to jump out into my eye sockets like a lot of people say.
I'm open-minded about that too. I mean, I'm a Christian, but I I enjoy studying the Zen koans, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I study Marcus Aurelius. I mean, I'm just one of those people. I don't ever close my mind to something. I'm secure enough in my faith that I feel like I can question anything and have an honest conversation with God about it.
Exactly.
Well, it's a long story. We're going to do an episode just on the Masons, but a lot of critique of the fraternity comes from Victorian era weirdness when they got, back in the seance and all those kind of days, Albert Pike.
Yeah, Albert Pike.
And some of those, and it's just way out there. It's some weirdness that we don't even observe today in the fraternity. I mean, most of the guys don't even know who they are. But it does get into that sort of thing about humanism and some of the natural law, and I'll read it and I'll go, man, okay, well, at least this tells me why I'm such a horrible person. It's like I see that, but I really appreciate your artistic and philosophical side, because that does, I think, to be in something like that, even what judges see, even you're not in the room with the dead bodies and all, but you deal with.
Oh, you see the pictures though.
You see the pictures, but you're in a different,
it's
a
more
totally
objective.
different position. Yeah. And it does work, and it does warp you. And Tim will tell you right now.
I agree.
From my time as a sex crime detective,
that's what I was about to say too.
Screwed up my brain. Yeah, that was
4 years in the federal court, and this was 2007 to 2011. So cyber crimes were like the hot thing, and there were a lot of different electronic device.
We sent you guys, We actually got to where a majority of ours were going federal because of. Well, I'm not even gonna get into it. It was just better to file it federally, because I mean, we kept a few and we did a lot of the forensics.
Well, the data is traveling across state lines. That you may have a server that's in one state or
pictures may be stored in Maryland and viewed in Texas.
And then if one guy gets it to you on FTP and you pay him for it, across
interstate commerce, man, commerce clause.
Yeah, it gets really weird. But I filed. I didn't file. I originated because I was a state cop, but a couple of drug cases I just couldn't get around. I had to do it. I mean, quite literally, the guy got arrested. I was on the SWAT team. We busted his house and did all this stuff, and everybody left. And I'm standing here holding 2.5 pounds of weed the guy had in his house, and I had to file it because what the hell else are you gonna do with it? And just my experience through that federal system, that was a way different thing. I mean, we wake up at JP and we can get a warrant for you, for capital murder. And that was not the case dealing with the feds, man. You had to deal with the agent. I had to deal with
lots of red tape
the prosecutor, and everybody. I mean, it had to be blessed up 3 levels. It was like in the Coast Guard. We'd have to sit and float in the water and wait 2 hours for the entire chain of command to agree on what we were going to do. This poor slob we caught breaking a fishery law or something like that. But no, I've heard nothing but good things about you.
Well, I appreciate that.
I know David, and he's the only person running.
No. There's 2 opponents running in my case. Wayne Frost is also a criminal defense attorney.
Oh, okay.
He ran before previously, and so he's another criminal defense and family law practitioner who's running, and it's a real apples and oranges campaign. I feel like, because my experience is totally different than theirs, because I'm saying, okay, I've worked criminal stuff, but I've worked it from the courts. I wasn't a trial attorney as a criminal lawyer the way that Wayne and David were. And I feel like, well, if we're going to just go off whoever has tried the most cases, then Wayne's going to win, because he's the oldest. He's tried a lot of cases. Done a bunch, But if that's the only criteria we're looking at, then everybody else just shouldn't even apply, right? So there's got to be some other reasons that you're looking at. And I feel like philosophy and judicial philosophy and the way you approach the courts and the cases is important. But moreover, like I was saying, we've got this increase on the civil side, and the civil attorneys in town are heavily supporting me, because they're saying we need somebody.
We need this.
We've got 4 of these courts, and 3 of them are criminal prosecutors and criminal defense attorneys, and they're doing great. They're doing their jobs, what we've all elected them to do, and by golly, let's let them do that. I just want to get in and help. People don't realize also that our our federal system, for instance, like I was the briefing attorney, so I was doing the research and I was writing the orders, and I was, all the judge would have to do is edit, here, here, and here, change this word, and then it could go out the door. But, well, if I was doing my job right, that's what he would have to do. I'll put it that way. But we don't have that on the state court level. So our state court, district court judges are hearing these wide varieties of cases. And yeah, a lot of their time and attention is pretrial hearings and criminal trials and stuff like that. So that stuff becomes rote after a while. You just kind of start, okay, this is it. I've seen this, this crime has been broken by 75 other people in the last 60 days. I know what to do.
You got a framework.
But
you
then
got a procedure. Yeah.
When you've got something completely out of left field thrown at you, like, we need interpretation of this probate document in this title case. I cannot imagine. Well, I can't imagine because I've done that type of analysis before, where you're focused 100% on your criminal case, and then you have to switch gears, and it just takes a very creative mind to make that shift happen in a quick manner. And that's what these judges are being asked to do.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. That's what they're doing on a daily basis.
Especially even like a big law firm, and you have your baby lawyers that just, got out of law school that are doing that in federal court. And I listened to Leto's Law podcast. He's a lawyer out of Michigan. And some of the courts in Michigan do that they'll have people. I never thought of that.
Well,
it's amazing.
And so that's why when I was saying earlier, like, we have a court that only handles divorce and family law cases. That is such a lovely thing to be able to just say, I do this type of law and only this type of law, because those other 4 judges don't get to do that.
Yeah, master's court. We got the master's court and the veteran court and all that.
And so they have to be jacks of all trades. And so that's kind of where another attorney was talking to me, and he said, it's nothing against anybody who's running against you. It's just that we'd rather have that knowledge available in the courthouse and not need it than need it and not have it.
Well, one of the things I'll just say just real quickly along those lines is that we're pretty blessed in this community that we have a whole bunch of good people running for these offices. I mean, I hope that people out there who may see this podcast realize the importance of them being registered to vote and voting in these important elections.
Absolutely.
Because thankfully you're in a part of the country where you have a lot of good people to choose from, but I really like, what you said about what is driving you to do this. I think that came across as very sincere to me.
Well, I appreciate it.
It does mean a lot.
I can't lie. I'm terrible at it. My face, if you guys are watching this on the podcast, my face is pretty transparent.
My wife tells me I have no poker face.
He doesn't. Yeah. If it hits Tim's brain, it goes out Tim's mouth.
Exactly.
And I think that's going to be the thing I have to control the most. If I take the bench, it's going to have to be, because I think it's important from the attorney's perspective. I love it when a judge will give me like cues like, ooh, I'm not doing that right, I need to change. Or maybe I need to alter my argument, or, but it's very important for the judge to not give you those cues, because they need to just issue their rulings and move along. Right. So I know that's going to be my biggest, thing I need to be mindful of, I guess.
Yeah. This all makes me feel old. I used to spot Judge Dar in the gym when she was a DA and I was a cop. Of course, Judge Leonard, known her a long time. Judge Robinette, and all of us. We have kind of a friendly conversational thing. If I go in the office for a warrant, it's business.
Yep.
And it's done. No chat, no small talk. Okay, the warrant's signed or it's not signed. We need this information. Go do it again or whatever. Done. So how are you doing?
Exactly.
We have this.
Business
it
first.
Reminds me of the old Looney Tunes, the series of cartoons with the coyote and the sheepdog. Right? They're like buddies.
Morning, Ralph.
And they punch in. Yeah. Morning, Sam. And then they immediately punch in and start smacking each other around, And
then at the end of the day, they clock out and they're buddies again.
Yeah. And that's pretty much alive in Midland.
I actually have the entire Looney Tunes DVD. So.
I need to copy that.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Been impossible to bootleg it, but and that's what's been weird. This topic for me in this whole thing of the elections, because I know all the people in this, from the DA's office and my 28 years in the local system. And I know David, and I know Wayne, and I know all the guys running for sheriff. I have, experience with, and, down to practical jokes and war stories and all. And that's why if anybody wants to be on the podcast, bring it on. You want to put a sign in my yard, toss it out there. I'm not going to make my opinion and my selection public because it is hard.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it is hard to look any of the sheriff candidates and say, "Man, I'm sorry, but you're not the guy."
And we've had some great folks running. Yeah. I mean, and we haven't had a sheriff selection in 30 years? I mean, anybody had a chance. Yeah, well, contested.
85 or 86. Yeah.
So I feel like our community, gosh, I mean, with all the elections stuff that went on this fall, we're kind of all, I hear it block walking people joke like, are you sure you want to run for public office? Because do you trust the
thing
yes,
about
we
it
all
is,
trust it. It's going to happen.
You've been here long enough that you understand the culture of West Texas, and for all of the influx, the ingress and egress of people from other places, I think that our core culture survives still. Yes. And people are ruggedly individualistic here, and they expect that in their public officials, and for that same reason, they expect to be listened to when they approach their public officials.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
they maybe deserve to as well.
Well, they definitely do, but there is a Midland, West Texas culture that if you're outside this area watching this, you'll be like, what is he talking about? But if you've been here for long enough, you understand what it is, and it's a good thing, and it's one of the things that has kept this community honest over all these decades and all these years.
Well, and I'll give you an example, like Sheriff Painter. I worked for him for 21 years of my 28, and he was sheriff forever.
Yeah,
I guess
I was either a freshman. I was either a freshman or a senior in high school when he was elected.
It's very difficult to do because everybody respects the guy. Painter is one of those people. If you just flat out hate the guy, there's probably something wrong with you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's. I didn't hear that from anybody with a valid knowledge.
You probably spent a lot of time in his jail.
Yeah, I was about to say. I bet there's some people who hate him, but they maybe have ulterior causes.
But the thing is, it's difficult. And I worked there for 21 years, and I, like I said, and I say all the time, there are issues that need to be fixed there. But at the same time, when I left the sheriff's office, I left a detective unit that worked sex crimes, and I was the commander of the SWAT team for 5 years. And the guy behind me, even though people have been happy with the job I did, and I was proud of the work I did, and I push for those jobs because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to lead like you do. I had a passion for it and a philosophy behind it, but still, as good of a job as I did, when I left, there were still holes. There were still things that I didn't focus on that the next person saw, the fresh eyes. And I think you said that verbatim was fresh eyes. And you can say that without any disrespect to the office because sometimes you just got to pass the torch. That's how it is.
Or I feel like especially at this point in Midland's history, like we were talking about, online, crimes are rising. And that's something that my predecessors didn't even deal with, didn't even read cases about this in law school, nonetheless participate in online life. And I don't even know where this is going to be in 20 years. None of us do, but gosh, we've got to...
Kind of a scary thought.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, I was an ethics, I told you I was a philosophy major. I was an ethics tutor for years. So these things are vastly interesting to me, and I want to help craft our response. I want to see how we can move forward. And I also, being a mom and a volunteer in the town, my kids, man, I want to make sure this is a place they want to come back to and live in 20 years from now and raise my grandbabies. So, I mean, it's important. We got to do it.
It is. I agree with you. And hopefully, I don't know how it's going to work out. Jim Storms is in town this weekend.
Nice.
He's a dear old friend of mine who is
the podcast's own Jim Storms.
Nice.
Yeah, he is our resident geek lord. He's a code head. He is a herder of code heads. He
among
leads
code
hordes
heads.
Of,
he is king.
Nice.
Yeah, he leads groups of people who can turn pizza into computer apps,
Wow.
and he's worked for Google and AT&T, and he's done some big stuff. And I really want to get with him and talk about computer crimes, because I've learned a few new ones since I left. And all I worked were pervert crimes, not finance crime. Well, I did some at the DA's office.
Did you do any with Austin Berry? He's been really involved with that. He's from Midland. He's on the federal system. He's a U.S. attorney.
He is the one we would call when we would stumble into, and again, ours were typically, if we got word, hey, this guy's doing child porn or whatever, I don't want to give up the way we found out about it, but people would say, this dude has child porn. Typically, we would just hand it off. And then we would work a perv crime and catch a person, based off of local reports, victim outcries or whatever. And then we would catch him, and I would work it as far back as I could. It's staying state and local. And as soon as it jumped a state line or something, or we knew where the guy was getting it, we would hand the computer part of it over to them and not charge or anything. It was a weird deal, but I have worked with him. Him and the DPS lab are just unbelievable.
I've heard, in a roundabout way, I've heard some of the stories of the things that he's managed to accomplish. He worked on a task force and was in D.C. for a long time. And, man, people in Midland have no idea what amazing things Midlanders are doing around our nation. And that's one of them. Gosh, experts.
Oh, yeah.
Experts.
Yeah, there's a lot of, especially in that field, and a lot of people, and just in Texas, I can tell you on the SWAT end of things, wow. I mean, there are some amazing things happening just right here in Texas. Yeah. I was lucky to be a part of it, and just on tactics and technology and structuring, we are kind of sitting on a gold mine here that I want to see keep going.
Yep.
Well, cool. Well, we're pushing the end of an hour, and we have to.
That went by fast.
It was fun.
Yeah, it does.
That's when we know it was really fun. It was
Good.
like, oh man!
Before we shut down, I Facebook stalked you, and you're extremely busy. What do you have coming up that people might want to check out?
Well, we're going to be doing. I'm doing a meet and coffee with folks at Manor Park this week, and then next week, I think on the 12th of February, the League of Women Voters is doing a forum, a candidates forum, and I think also the Exchange Club next week is doing a candidates forum. So,
what about a website where people can
support? Yeah, I wrote my own website. I feel so proud of myself. I made myself stay up and figure out how to do this.
Well, you'll have to come back for the Jim Storms episode.
Yes, I know. Yeah. He could probably teach me a lot. Somebody's going to look at my website now and be like, yeah, I can tell an amateur did this.
It looked great to me.
Yeah, my website is www.marybakerforjudge.com. I was shocked because my name is so plain. I was shocked that was still available as a website domain, and it was. So, marybakerforjudge.com.
Okay. We're going to put that. You'll find it in the description down below. This will be a super easy one to edit because we didn't have 10,000 pictures like we did on the last couple.
Like Bigfoot playing a saxophone.
Yeah, it's amazing. We were talking about what's happening in this podcast. I am not making this up. Last week we were talking about Bigfoot. Yeah. And our Skeptics Roundtable.
It can be anything. Skeptics Roundtable, Bigfoot. We're into all these geeky things, astronomy and rocketry, and so we never run out of things.
So, like in a year, when you call me back, I'll be like, "Yeah, sorry, Judge Baker, we've got a UFO episode."
I kept waiting for you guys to ask me about
Sunday.
Yeah, I kept waiting for you guys to ask me about the Super Bowl halftime show.
Oh, I had a hot sports opinion on that on my Facebook page.
It's been all over the place.
I was working. I felt good, and I did nothing but turn wrenches all day yesterday. I don't even know who won the Super Bowl.
Well, the Chiefs thankfully won it. And the only reason I won, I didn't realize that the quarterback was a Tech alum.
Oh, yeah.
So that makes it all the better. But I was just, they haven't won a Super Bowl or been to a Super Bowl since I've been born. So that was kind of neat to see that. But yeah, I was put down with I'm a pretty political guy. I'm politically homeless, but I am a political guy.
This is a place for the politically homeless.
And my whole take on it was just the simple fact that we suffered through an entire first half of that football game of a bunch of woke ads and female empowerment filler and all this, and then it was followed up basically by the objectification of women in the halftime show. And how does this not create cognitive dissonance for
children.
A certain, well, the children thing is a completely different thing. I don't have any children, so thankfully I didn't have to go, get out, but I know a lot of children.
Do I need to watch this?
You definitely need to watch it.
All right.
Yeah. So I will say, like, I grew up in South Texas, and so I'm very like Latina empowerment. Like I'm down with it, and so I totally got where they were coming from the hey, this is Miami, and this is stage costuming, and this is Shakira and Jennifer Lopez.
Oh, so it was real strippery.
It had a
that word has been thrown around.
Pole. There was a stripper pole.
Yeah.
Yes,
I need to watch this. Okay. I will watch a football game for the first time in 30 years. Yeah.
But for me, art for art. I mean, obviously, I serve on art boards, and I'm not going to criticize artists. For me, it was camera angles. Like, there's just one point where, regardless of the rest of it, like, I have a 10-year-old son who is a big Patrick Mahomes fan, like, dressed up for him for, like, Halloween, wore his jersey all day yesterday, slept in it last night. And my 10-year-old, like, self-regulated on this because he was so, like, cringy because he had to sit in a room with his mom and it was just like my husband and I turned and he looked at me and he goes, I think our son just came of age right now watching this
like
halftime
I said,
show.
You may not speak ill of art, but Tim and I are musicians. We're old musicians, and we both have enormous egos, and we're jaded, so we will rain hate on anyone that we think.
I can't wait to hear what your opinion
I'll have
is.
to watch it. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't necessarily have a problem with anything that happened during that Super Bowl halftime show, except for that it happened at the Super Bowl halftime show.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of conversations about human trafficking and Super Bowl and all this stuff too.
I don't have
Outstanding.
a problem with
Sure. Wow.
I'm not judgmental on people about, like I said, I'm politically homeless. I'm conservative on a lot of things. I lean hard left on some things, and I'm libertarian about a lot of things. So I don't have a moral problem with what happened at the Super Bowl, except for the fact that it happened at the Super Bowl and there were so many little kids watching. Our society sexualizes little kids way too soon, and I think it's a social problem, and I know you probably can't even render an opinion on that.
Not right now.
I would
on March 4th, you and I can have that conversation
exactly
offline.
Right. But anyway, that's what bothered me about it. I didn't have a problem with what happened. It was just where it happened and the context.
Oh yeah, that does make total sense. Yeah. And before we punch out, we were talking about objectification of women and all. Another podcaster that I follow tried to watch Mad Men, and he's very much in the woke community. He said, I just can't watch this objectification and all this Me Too and all this victimization and blah, blah, blah.
Dude, he should try being a female attorney in the oil and gas industry in West Texas.
And then
I have been hit on by men and women out in the field. It's fun.
I saw that, and I just answered him in a comment that was probably never read, that my mother was in the oil and gas industry. She began as a secretary, eventually was training data entry people into the 80s when all these companies were going from paper ledgers to computers. She worked for a software company, and that's what she did. And I said, that's how it was.
Yeah.
That is just the way it was. And then you fast forward to me, and I worked with a lot of women in law enforcement at the DA's office, and we have 2 female judges now, district court.
That's right. Hopefully 3 pretty soon.
And 3, yeah, we're working on 3. But I can say what I hear 90% of the time, when one of those people, when a lady in these professions, in law enforcement, in the judicial system is criticized, it's not anything but what they actually have done, and that's, I see that as a victory based on what my mom had to deal with.
Yeah,
with all the butt pinching and you're just a girl, answer the phone and that kind of thing.
Make me some coffee.
Why are you sending a woman to teach our people how to do this? And it's okay if she teaches the secretaries, but like she doesn't need to be teaching our engineers. They're all dudes. But I go back to that now. But I'm obviously not female in that, and I could definitely see that kind of weirdness happening.
If you ever want me back for another podcast, I'll tell you all about it.
I'd love to hear it.
Oh,
yeah.
That's
it's
good
fun.
stuff. But it just, when I think about it, when somebody says something negative about a female judge, attorney, cop, whatever, it's typically
fact-based. So
they suck at doing this, or they did this, and I think that was kind of crazy, or whatever. Not because chicks shouldn't be doing that. Nothing like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't typically hear that. Even one of the most like masculine knuckle dragging dudes in the world, he said, I have no problem working with female attorneys. He said they typically think differently, but they're just as powerful.
No, the only thing
get the job done.
Yeah. I don't know. This is totally ancillary. This has nothing to do with anything. But the only thing I've found is where females don't like to work with each other.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say earlier.
They don't mind. Dudes don't mind working with chicks, and chicks don't mind working with dudes, and dudes don't mind working with dudes. But where I have seen it is chicks sometimes don't like working with chicks.
That's
sometimes.
true. Yeah.
And I will not render an opinion at this time on why I think that is.
I can tell you when I became the sergeant over that unit, it was youth services, and we did sex crimes, juvenile crimes, and all that stuff. And I found myself working with a lot of women, sane nurses, forensic interviewers, counselors, attorneys, everybody. And I remember planning an event. We had to do a charity drive thing for Rape Crisis Center.
Oh yeah.
So I was in a room with 5 women. It was me and 5 women on this board. And I am, like you said, the structure, the flow chart, the grid, the graph, the lines, your chips stacked up. And I sat there, and they all 4 or 5 of them were thinking aloud into the air and were somehow communicating with each other. And I'm sitting here looking, going, I
cannot follow this.
And they were all sitting here going, now my husband and I went to that place in Vegas, and they had blah blah blah, and that would be pretty cool. And they were interacting, so it's like it was like this Wi-Fi that I didn't have the password for. So I just sat at the table, and finally I realized they had settled on a band. I'm like, did you say band?
Band.
I'm your guy. I can do that. So pretty much I gave the red carpet treatment to the band that they brought in from somewhere. I can't remember. And I set up all that, and I did made sure the sound engineering was right, and made sure the band was, because I knew how to do that.
Yes.
The rest of it.
Yes.
And it was a rousing success. But anyway, fantastic. Okay, so we have your website. Could you say it one more time now that we're really for real ending because the batteries are about to die?
MaryBakerForJudge.com.
And you're also on Facebook.
Yes, Facebook /MaryBakerForJudge.
Fantastic. All that will be in the comments. We will link it directly. Maybe not the Facebook one because that gets weird. Yeah. The Van Cave on Facebook. If you watch us, you'll find everything there. We put it in the comments there. Facebook loves Facebook, so we'll do that.
Yeah.
And Buzzsprout if you want the audio only version.
Yeah, and also Buzzsprout links us to pretty much anything. So whatever you get your podcasts or audio or music on, we're probably there under the Van Cave. One thing I would like to point out that I'm going to forget it. There it went. Share us on Facebook. I'm not in many of the Midland forums. There's so many, and it got weird, and some don't like candidate posts, and some do. Just share us on your favorite groups. Share us with your friends.
That helps
especially for the candidates, because they don't really. You guys just don't get a voice really, other than this, unless it's a minute on the radio or a 4 a.m. We have the viewership of about a 4 a.m. news show, so we'll give you that.
I'll take it, man. I'll take it.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Thank y'all.
We got to do this again.
Yeah,
one way or another.
I'm in.
After your judge, it'll be.
Yeah. We can talk Star Wars or philosophy or
we can go deep on philosophy.
Yeah. Our Star Wars, you get into old man country now. Yeah. Anyway, I got a little bit left, guys. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Best of luck to you.
Thanks,
Take care. Thank you guys for watching.
Thanks.
Later.
Like and subscribe and share.
That was great.
That was so much fun.